I'm not going to tell you that every one of us would not like to be treated better in terms of how how our working overlords, if you will, deal with us. I use overlords in a kind of a tongue-in-cheek way. It's not really much of a thing to me. I don't have much of a problem with that, but I don't think any one of us would like to be treated worse, and I think really honestly just about everybody would like to be treated better by the folks for whom we work. But I wanted to talk today about this idea of the treatment of workers. So my subject is treatment of workers on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 9th of February of 2022. Welcome to the podcast for everybody who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on Minds, minds.com, on Locals, on Parler, on Gab. Wherever you happen to be seeing me, like I say, you might catch me on Minds and a few other places. I try to put my content in a sort of variety of different places so that people have a chance to see me. Remember that Rumble is my preferred platform, but I figure people are going to kind of see me just about everywhere. Today's subject, again, is going to be treatment of workers, and I'm going to go ahead and go through my notes as usual to kind of set the tone of what we're actually talking about today. Is it really true that workers are being treated substantially worse today than, say, 20 or 30 years ago? How does the treatment of workers in the modern moment compare to the way they were treated at the turn of the 20th century? How about the comparison of workers today, where we compare the treatment of workers in the 60s to that time? What about the 30s? The assumption is we've been steadily sliding downward in how workers are being treated. The reality, though, is that there are more advocates for workers today than probably ever before, certainly ever in my lifetime. And that's particularly true for workers in the West, certainly in the United States, and I think you would find that it's true for most of Europe as well. I'm not saying worker exploitation doesn't exist. And that certainly folks haven't profited mightily by that fact, right? Of course. Yeah, that's happened. My point is to say, for the most part, the freer the society, the greater the chance there will be entities working to help, quote, employees, end of quote, to have better lives. What about compensation for laborers? Has it become better or worse over time? I would have a terribly difficult time arguing people are earning less or not getting benefits they did in past, and generally better than folks in past did. Excuse me. There are constant pushes to mandate a higher wage for people on the bottom of the ladder. That's actually one of the things I believe is working against workers. Funnily, the more the folks, excuse me, my notes are a little bit awkward here. The point is, more the folks who are closer to the bottom, but not there and down, right? So very close to the bottom, but not there and down to the bottom. Why? Because as wages rise at the bottom, prices invariably rise with them. Then the folks who were just above minimum wage become minimum wage, and or close to that low watermark. They might not be all the way down there, but they're very close. That means their pay from the bottom up is more significant, and it's more significant that it is worth less, not worthless, but worth less than it was before that increase in prices. Again, you can't judge that. Got to read my own notes. You can't change that unless you control prices, which comes with problems all its own. And we can talk about that later if we get the time and I happen to remember. But the point of all I'm trying to say here is, if you look at where wages and treatment of workers was in the past, you should be acutely aware things are far better today for most workers literally around the world, and again, specifically, definitely in the West. That doesn't mean there are not things that need to be improved, or that specific individuals are not being abused or mistreated. That's happening, I promise. Do you believe most workers are being treated badly for the most part? I promise That's not what I'm seeing in my neck of the woods. Okay, we're done with notes. There are people who would argue that what we can buy with our current wages is less than it was literally just a year ago. But I want to point out something about that. Where it's been a long time since we've seen inflation like we're seeing today, it hasn't been 50 years. I don't believe. Maybe around that time. 40, 50 years. Jimmy Carter probably was the last time that things were this disastrous. Okay? Maybe Jimmy wasn't even quite this bad. I don't know. I'd have to do some research to find out. But my point is to say this. You're no worse probably than you were under Jimmy Carter. Or not much worse, if worse, than you were under Jimmy Carter if you were alive and working in that time today. And you're not being treated any worse. For the most part, most people work a 40-hour week. That's what they do. That's as far as they go. Some people work more than that. Oftentimes they do so, like the guy I took a ride. I had a ride on a ride-sharing app from just yesterday, who works more than 40 hours a week because they pay him for all the time he works over, and that's gimme to him. That's just money that he takes and socks away in the bank or spends on whatever it is he cares about. And so the point is, he works more than 40 hours a week where he works, but the fact of the matter is, he likes to do that. He wants to do that in order to make that additional money, and quite frankly, drives for ride sharing when he's not doing that. So he's actually making even more money when he's not doing that. And this is what I need for you to understand. You can say all you want that people are being treated horribly badly, the workers of the world are oppressed. If they're oppressed, it's by the government, not by the businesses for whom they work. And this is why right now we have the Canadian trucker demonstration going on, and why that's ramping up in the United States, and why lots of people in the United States are complaining about what the government is doing overall. So largely it has nothing to do with what their bosses are doing or saying. What happens for the most part is you go to someone and say, I want to work for you, and that person says, okay, fine, that's fine. Here's what I'm willing to pay, or what are you willing to work for? Typically it's one of those two. Most of the time in my little fields, it tends to be, what are you willing to work for? What's the minimum we can pay you? And I'll admit that that's what they're doing, and they'll admit that that's what they're doing. They're trying to keep their prices down on the production of their product so that they can sell their product at a reasonable rate, and that's why they do what they do. And among other things, they also want to make their business profitable, and most of them are public companies, and that means they're in retirement accounts and various other things, so that other people are actually gaining off of the fact that you're not making as much money, so more profit is being made, or more dividends are being paid, or whatever it happens to be, right? But the point that I'm making here is, if you look at the way workers of the world are treated, you will see as a rule that they're not treated worse. And I wanted to get into really quick this idea that you can control prices and that would make everything all better. But the reality is this: if you look at things like Medicare, Medicaid, and the doctors and various other entities that are working with those quote products, you will find that many of them are leaving that work in droves because they know they can't get paid what it's actually costing them to survive. So when you try and limit prices, you're going to find that creates a problem, a new problem that you're going to have to deal with, and it's going to mean that a lot of folks are just going to stop doing that sort of thing altogether. They're going to do what they're going to get paid for. That includes companies just as well as workers, and this is what you need to consider. Okay, so again, in my view, worker treatment has not declined in my lifetime. In fact, I've seen it to get better over the course of time. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I've seen it to get better. I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 9th of February of 2022. That means tomorrow will be Thursday, edging towards the end of the week, the 10th of February of 2022. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on Minds.com, MINDS.com, on Locals.com, Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, on Gab, on Parler, Twitter, on my Facebook page, wherever you happen to be seeing me today. Remember that Rumble is my preferred platform. Remember that you can give me a boxing glove or a Rumble on Rumble if you choose to do so. You can give me a plus or a minus also on Rumble, and whatever the similar like or dislike is on any platforms that offer that, where I'm posting my content, and I will do my best to pay attention to what people are showing me there. Obviously, you can also comment on any platform where comments are available, and I'll try to look at all comments that come my way and respond to them. Obviously, if I start to get to the point where I'm getting too many comments, I will be less inclined to be as careful looking at them, but I will try and look at them nonetheless, and if I feel it's reasonable, I will respond. Obviously, lots of the time, maybe that's not necessarily a thing, though I've tended to do that on most of my comments to this point in time. Subject for today has been treatment of workers, and tomorrow is going to be large against small, and I want to relate that particularly to business. But I think it's something that you can sort of relate across a variety of things, and I may take a little bit of time to try and do that as well. Hope that you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's edition. That would be Thursday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Wednesday, February the 9th of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that, and you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.